Hey, this is Ian Spanier, Los Angeles-based portrait photographer. Today for PPA, we're going to talk about the light meter. A light meter is the essential tool for all photographers. If you want to understand, capture, and anticipate light, you should be using a light meter. Today, we're going to break down three very different scenarios: natural, continuous, and artificial light through a strobe, and teach you exactly why a light meter is the tool that is essential to capturing great photography. It always surprises me when photographers today resist using a light meter. I say this because when it comes to photography, we need to understand light and not just rely on our cameras, especially when we introduce artificial lighting. Our cameras should not be driving our images. We are more than just a monkey pushing a button after all. I bring you Light Meter Man. Here I am with my light meter and my trigger to fire my strobe. I walked into the photo shoot knowing that I wanted to make my portrait at just under an aperture setting of f8 today. I knew I wanted to shoot at ISO 200 and 1/200th of a second. I set my desired ISO and shutter speed combination on the light meter. Next, I trigger my strobe and make my adjustments up or down in power on the strobe to reach the desired aperture reading of f5.68. I fire my first exposure, and to no shock, the exposure is spot on. This means my client standing over there by the iPad will no doubt be happy. In this case, he hired the right monkey. To understand what aperture means, let's take a brief look at how depth of field drives our images. Here is a pretty simple setup: a small statue of a horse, a stack of books, and a vintage camera. I'm going to light this scene with a Westcott FJ402 strobe with a 43-inch deep silver umbrella with diffusion on it. In general terms, if we decided before we picked up our camera that this image should be all about the horse, and the books in the vintage camera should be out of focus, then we know we want to start with a low depth of field, also known as a wide aperture, also known as soft focus in simple terms. Then we know that we are in the range of anything from, say, f1.2 to, say, f5.6. This would result in an image like this. If, let's say, that we wanted a little bit more information about the stack of books and the vintage camera, we will increase our depth of field by working with a range of, say, f5.6 to f11, which results in an image like this. Finally, if we wanted to see all three items in focus, then we want a longer depth of field, which would be between f11 and f32, which would result in an image like this. Now, as many of you already know, in order to make our proper exposure, we need to understand the inverse relationship between shutter speed and aperture. As one goes up, the other goes down, and vice versa. That means that to understand how to properly expose our images, we need to know that it's all about how much light we are allowing in the camera, and that could be done either through shutter or through aperture. When working with artificial light sources, we have the added ability to increase the power of the light so that we can keep the exact shutter speed and aperture combination that we like, so long as we have enough power through our lights to accommodate the exposure. Now you may be asking yourself, why can't I just use my LCD screen? The answer is simple, you can. But the LCD is never exactly the same. Different light conditions will affect how your brain interprets the screen. Whether you're inside, outside, there's lights in the room that are on or off, those are all variables that will change how our brain will interpret the LCD screen. Now, if you understand that a histogram is a very useful tool to understand the exposure, fantastic, you're on the right path. If you are using that LCD to judge your image and not using your meter, at the very least, please use at least that histogram. But truthfully, a meter will always get you there faster. Okay, let's get back to the fun stuff, shooting. For set number 1, let's examine natural light. Yes, most of our cameras have a light meter internally. So for all intents and purposes, we can make this setup work without an external meter. But will our camera interpret the scene the way that we want? Who's in control after all? Is it us or the camera? Gia, a fantastic actress, artist, and model, threw a curveball at me for today's shoot and sent me some natural light portraits as inspiration for what we would do today. Breaking it down, we have a hard overhead sun, and I will use some of it on the background. Then have Gia sitting in open shade for the nicer quality of light. I know I want to shoot at a lower ISO because I don't need a very high ISO as there's plenty of light. I know that I want a shutter speed of at least 1/200th of a second to help freeze any movement with the wind and loose background. And I know that my depth of field does not need to be very long because I don't really want the trees in the background to be in focus. I will add a little bit of extra light by using a V-flat World V-flat to bounce some white into the scene. Without a meter, this is how the camera interprets the scene. Using my light meter, I take a reading towards camera from my subject. I see that a combination of ISO 320 with a shutter speed of 1/200th of a second results in f/5.6. Now, of course, there's a lot we can do in post, but I want my clients always to see a near spot-on image from camera, as that only makes me look better at my job. Now, open shade is always a great solution for beautiful light, so with less depth of field, I want to make a tighter portrait as well. Notice how the depth of field change makes for a very different feel to the final image. For set number 2, let's use an LED light. When you have any continuous light source, you have what's called WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get, just like we had when we were outside. This means, of course, our camera can read the situation. For this shot, I'm going to use a Nanlite Fresnel over my Westcott L120-B LED light. But a light meter will once again get you in the correct exposure that you want faster. So once again, before our camera is even in hand, the question you should be asking yourself is what aperture will make the right feel for this image. I want to create the feel of sunlight entering a room for this one. Now ideally, we would have a blacked out studio for any situation where ambient light will affect our exposure. But we can use V-flats to help cut some of the ambient light here and focus our camera's attention on the LED. The results show we are controlling the camera and the camera is not controlling the final image. For set number 3, our second artificial light source. Strobe lighting is where I put the most weight on the need for a light meter. Here is where we would most need to understand what our light source is doing. And the camera meter in this case is pretty useless. Again, by approaching from the standpoint that I have a predetermined f-stop that I would like to shoot at, I know exactly what my goal is for how much power will be coming out of the strobe. I'm putting my Westcott 24-inch deep silver umbrella with diffusion onto the Westcott FJ400 version 2 strobe. And once again, using the trigger and meter to get my desired combination of aperture, shutter, and ISO. As you can see, the first frame is right on target. Note that whether working with strobe, LED, or outside natural light, the bottom line is that the feel of light should always trump the technical numbers. So as much as I rely on a light meter and love my light meter, I will always say that the feel is the most important thing. In this case, with our strobe, I will here now know whether to turn my power up or down based on the feel of the image and what might feel better than what the technical numbers result in. But I will also always argue that by using the light meter, taking that initial reading, you're always going to be in the zone that much faster. For set number 4, we're going to change our modifier. Efficient photo shoots mean more value for your clients and more money in your pocket when you can accomplish the goal of the day that much faster. Since we move so quickly, let's go ahead and change our modifier on the FJ400 version 2 and go for a different quality of light. I added my Rapid Box 1x3 strip bank and put up the Westcott X-Drop black fabric background for this one. Here I want a punchy shaft of light raining down on Gia. As you can see in the video, we see some of the window light behind our black fabric. Because of the light meter, we can read the ambient in the room and know exactly how much power we need out of our strobes combined with the settings on the camera in order to eliminate any of those ambient lights that are affecting our overall exposure. This is yet another use for the light meter that comes in very handy. When we truly understand light, we not only recognize its different qualities, but we can also use our ability to think in depth of field to predetermine the kind of image that we want to create. Our meter is the key to all of this. If you understand the inverse relationship of shutter speed and aperture and how ISO can be used to allow you the opportunity to capture more light, then this is an easy path. The light meter literally tells you what aperture to set your camera to make the correct exposure with your chosen shutter speed and ISO settings. Replay that if you need to, but this is what all of this is about. Once again, for PPA, this is Ian Spanier. Thanks for joining us. Please comment and like below.